We'll look at some of these drive rims and sprockets in more detail shortly, but on each one here you can see there's various states of wear, and particularly the inboard ones, it's very to see how they are wearing. On the actual spur type sprockets it's easier to see, and this one hasn't actually got that much wear. That one's actually fine, I think the only one that's fine of all of these. But the inboard ones that are up hard against the chainsaw, it's often hard to see. This one's a very clear example of a sprocket that's well past its use by date, and similar for this drive rim. This setup here is a really good example of some of the things that can happen if your drive sprocket is worn. This one isn't horrendously worn, but we'll look up closer how the spur eats into the tie straps. So if you look at the spur sprocket on this, you can see it's very heavily worn on all of the teeth here. This one's particularly jagged. And what you'll find is that if you're using that with an old bar and chain that have worn with this drive sprocket, it won't work very well, but it will still cut wood and it sort of works. But what you don't want to do is buy a new bar and chain but continue running this old, very worn drive sprocket, because it will damage the chain, which will then damage the bar, and each time that new chain goes around this old worn drive sprocket, it will be peening and getting damaged on the tie straps and the underside, which then runs through a high tolerance bar, causing massive heat build-up. You can see as that worn spur sprocket comes up into the tie straps how much that is wearing the underside of the chain. And you can see the chain isn't that old by the length of the cutter teeth, but look how much damage has been done already. This will then not only wear and rasp away at the bar, but it will also potentially cause early failure in the nose sprocket, where it peens the nose sprocket gets hotter than it should do. If you get this band of bluing on the metal, pretty much your bars are right off. You can still use it, but it's going to be more prone to chipping, breakage and all sorts of things. So it's gone too far in this case already. I mean, we don't know exactly if this is what the cause was on this bar, but again, when you see that blackness, the paint peeling away, in the end it will happen to all the bars, but not on a new bar. So this bar's built up enormous heat, has been forced to cut, or there's been damage. Looking at this Sugihara bar, again, the bar's pretty much a write-off at this stage. It's already overheated and it's already been taken. So if we look at this chain, this is particularly worn and peened. When you look up close, you see that rounding where it sort of rounds up the burring. That's actually really bad. Even if it's only moderate, at the very end of the chain you'll get some of that. But if the chain is fairly new, something is wrong, and this is what is damaging people's bars. All of these examples that I'm showing here are not from where people have sent in to get their stuff appraised. They're all from people, customers that have said, I bought a new bar a few weeks ago, the nose sprocket's failed, it's got really hot, or there's a chip taken out of it, or there's a chip taken out of the bar. And I think there's what needs to be improved is that knowledge of the drive sprocket, the chain and the bar are all touching each other, they're all linked together. So if one of them is worn, it will premature wear the others faster if you put new things on. So if you've got a worn drive sprocket, you change the bar and the chain, the worn drive sprocket will wear the bar and the chain super quickly. This nose here failed, but you can already see there is a lot of gouging and scoring on the surface there, which again is not normal, and it's quite serious if you're getting stuff like that. This one here, inboard rims, it's a real pain in the backside changing some of these, because you've often got to block the piston in order to get the clutch off. So, and also they're hidden from view. So a double whammy there really, and very understandable why they don't get changed that often, but it is something that you do need to do. This is the new Husky bar, and you can see the bands. If this was an older bar, if it'd done a fair few hours work, you'd expect to see this, but this is pretty new. So what's caused that paint to peel off and slight bluing? In this case, I think it was a worn, very worn drive rim. put on a new chain, and it doesn't necessarily have to do that much damage in order to cause problems with a new bar. So when you glance at this chain, you can see it's pretty much brand new. I think it's a bit further up the chain where the light hits it, but you can see what's going on with that tie strap there, and you can see it's already starting to peen almost straight away. And so it doesn't look major and it doesn't look like a big deal, but it is a big deal if you want to keep your guide bar. If you've got a very high tolerance guide bar that's brand new, these are what will suffer the most. That's another very worn chain, beautifully sharp and maintained sort of chain on the top half, but the underneath it's pretty knackered. That's another chip out of a bar. That's our best one for wear into the tie straps and the tooth. You can really see it's actually coming up into the rivets there, so that's the most extreme one there. Bars breaking and cracks developing in the bar, that can often happen when you get a burr or a chip first, and then the breakage happens afterwards.